Hello and welcome to the Slingshot channel. Another Viking episode, probably the most interesting of all of them. You know, the Vikings game is my biggest sponsor and they came back so many times to me. I love them for this because without them my channel would no longer be around. In any case, they always come with a challenge and that's what I love the most. Now the challenge of today is really easy. What if a Viking weapon maker would have access to modern day material? How would he build a Viking shield like, not this one because this is really a fake little toy, but one of the real ones that they used in battle? Okay, but before we go into detail, let's take a look at the game again. I love it because it always changes, so many updates. Since I played it last time, I think there's so many new things. I love it for that. Now the game has so many players that there's, even if you take all the Vikings that ever lived and combine them into a single figure, now there's a lot more people playing the game today than we ever had Vikings on this planet. And you can really do what the Vikings could also do. You can decide if you want to be a diplomat, you can decide if you want to go into battle, you can decide, you know, to do anything. Build a huge castle or something, or attack a castle. That's all possible. I love it because it's slowly paced. This means that you're never in a hurry. You can do all things slowly, and yet it's so entertaining, and I love the graphics, wonderful graphics. So this one. And again, if you download the game from the link below, you get a wonderful little starter package. You get a protection shield, you get 200 gold coins, and I really encourage you to do that because it helps my channel, and actually I promise you'll enjoy it. And maybe we will even meet on the battlefield. I don't play it very often because I don't have that much time, but I think it's the only cell phone game that I currently play. Alright, let's take a look at Viking shields. Now this of course is a poor example because, well, first of all it's beaten up because I used it in earlier experimentations. It has a boss, but it doesn't really have the hole in here, and because Viking shields were usually held in the middle, so there was a hole here, so you could put your fist inside of the boss, and it gives you full control because then you can rotate the shield and you can move it freely. This shield actually has reinforcements, and those were not typical. The boss, of course, the steel boss, was very, very necessary part. Other than that, most Viking shields were made of wood, and actually they were painted so that nobody could see the structure of the wood, because the wood, of course, would only splinter in one way and not in the other way. And this one even has a steel rim, which in many cases the original Viking shields did not have. But they were leather reinforced like this one. But this, of course, was the thin leather. I think they really had rawhide or something like that, which gave it a lot more strength, specifically if it shrunk when put on wet and then they dried it. In any case, it's also too small. Normal Viking shields were like 85 centimeter diameter, and this one is too small. So we have to build one that is the original size and at least the original strength. Yeah, I think we can enhance it, and here is how. When looking at modern materials, of course, let's look at what police uses these days. And it's these shields, and that's a good example of a shield that I've completely abused. I mean, I shot into it with my 1100 joule air gun and lots of arrows and all kinds of things, and more often than not, it did not penetrate. This is one solid piece of police equipment, and it's made from polycarbonate. This means it's a very tough material, and you can really see how it tries to cling on to everything that you put in, because it stays elastic in a way. It doesn't really easily splinter. Now, I think that is the material that a modern day Viking weapon maker would have used, but of course much thicker. So I ordered just the right piece from a company that even cuts it into shape for me. And here it is, a solid disc of 1 centimeter polycarbonate. It's actually completely transparent. You don't see this yet because there is this protective foil on it. I removed this as the last step in the production process. And it is 85 centimeter diameter, which is like a typical size for a Viking shield. It's said that they used to be between 80 and 90 centimeters, so 85 centimeters is right in the middle. And of course I need to install a proper boss. And so therefore I had them opening this up 13 centimeters wide so I can install a steel boss. And actually I've been thinking about this, and I believe steel is still the best choice, but I'd like to go double safe and use 2 bosses instead of just 1. Okay, regarding the boss, I was originally thinking to use one of these cold steel bucklers, and they're actually fun little training devices. But it even says here on the inside of the product, not for use when training against metal weapons. Well, we'll certainly put this to test if this is any effective against metal weapons, because look how thick the material is. It's really thick material, probably really tough too. But then again, if they say it's not okay, maybe we need to look at steel too, or even combine both. Alright, so I've been ordering some steel bosses, really high quality steel bosses, 2mm thickness, so very tough stuff. I think it will be almost impossible to penetrate this with a metal sword or anything. But of course, now I have to decide whether I want to use 2 of those stacked, and they don't really fully stack up, so I have to use some distance keeper between them. Or if it's probably better to combine one with the cold steel buckler. And that could work fairly easily, because these 2 do stack up, see? You can simply put the cold steel one over the original buckler, and then you have the advantage of both the toughness of the plastic material and then of course the sturdiness of the steel. So I think that's the way to go. Alright, now for mounting the boss we first have to drill the holes for the 4 screws, and with polycarbonate you should never first drill through with a small bit, because then the other one will try to squeeze into the first hole, and then you can actually not attach this firmly enough into the drill here. Okay, now we will put on the boss, and we will use nails like, and we will use screws like this one here with a flat head, so blades will slip off. Okay, and here's our boss. Perfectly centered and very nice. Alright, now I've taken off the handle. Nice handle, really. I think I can copy a little bit of that design for our final handle, because it really sits well in the hand. And now I have this left, and we'll simply mount this over the original steel boss. We have to use M8 screws because the original screws were not long enough to fit through. Okay, now we have a shield that has the cold steel buckler in the front and 2mm steel on the inside. I think nothing can ever get through this. So now we have to deal with the handle. And as I said, I really love the buckler handle from cold steel. But of course, since that one is curved and ours is flat, that's not the shape that we can use. So I came up with this shape. And as you see, it's got the same kind of curve here. So it's pretty much identical. But the difference is that this is longer and straight, where this is curved. And of course I also was thinking about the material. Of course modern plywood is a lot more solid than any of the wood that the ancient Vikings had. It's laminated wood, so it's strong since the fiber direction is irrelevant. But also I want to combine this with aluminum. And that's also a material that Vikings had no access to. But I think it is lightweight and very strong, and combined with the wood, I think it makes a super interesting, sturdy yet lightweight handle. So let's go for it. Okay, now you can see how this is going to work. 3 layers, middle layer from wood, then aluminum on one side, and we're going to make another one for the other side. And then you have a nice thick handle, and it's both sturdy and lightweight. So as you see, it is now finished and ready for action. So I can just, you know, do the entire Viking style fighting, and I can turn it around and move it freely. It is a little bit on the heavy side, but hey, it's for strong warriors, and you could always go thinner with the polycarbonate. And I also fully trust the boss now, based upon the fact that it is part steel and part ABS plastics. And we need to put it to test, of course, right now. I can even see what my dog is doing. Nothing much. Okay, how much does it weigh? Alright, that's just about exactly what a Viking shield is supposed to weigh. Okay, now in order to test if this is better than an original Viking shield, of course there's two different conditions. We have to do distance weapon tests, and this definitely gave you protection against arrows. You could even crouch behind it like this. But this has the advantage that you can see. I think it's a very important advantage over a wooden shield. And also, of course, we have to test melee weapons. Although I have to say that I learned from the experts, remember the video when I visited Stefan, the thing is that, of course, people try not to hit the shield. Because if you hit the shield, then you're in danger to lose your sword, and you give the opponent a chance to attack you. So therefore, melee weapons are only interesting to some degree. Still, we need to test it. And of course, we also have to have a benchmark. And here is our benchmark. It's 12mm plywood. That's really solid, and I think this wood is far superior than any wood that was used by the Vikings, which was usually non-laminated wood, because this won't have a fiber direction. Therefore, it's very hard to split it. And but I think that if something can penetrate this, it could definitely have penetrated an original Viking shield. And this is our test setup. As you see, it's not clamped in. It is still giving a little bit. I think that's ideal because that's just the way how someone would hold it. But still, it gives us enough resistance to test fast objects. So, of course, it's actually not an authentic Viking Age weapon, but this is still the Slingshot channel. So we have to begin with a Slingshot. And this is my trusted one with the front plate, made from an old wine box. And it is not the strongest band set that I'm shooting, but it gives you an average feeling of what you can do with a Slingshot against something like this. Now, I don't expect that this will penetrate either the plywood nor the polycarbonate shield. But let's try. Shooting a 19mm lead ball because of the ricochet danger. Alright. It crashed through, right through. Pretty clear, full penetration. Look at that. And of course the exit hole looks not as tidy as the entry hole. I can see a dent, but that's it. Now I can see a little bit of a smear here where the ball hit. But actually, I think, yeah, I can simply clean this away. I think it's just a little bit of dust and a little bit of the lead. But look what happened to the lead ball. Alright, so the next ranged weapon that we need to test is a powerful warbow or a powerful crossbow. And we are going to use a modern version of that. That's the FX Airguns Bobcat Arrow. Legally a toy in Germany. Und tatsächlich, wenn ihr Deutsch seid, im Moment im Sonderangebot, komplett mit Kompressor, 50 Pfeilen, alles was man braucht, für knapp über 2000 Euro. Ich packe euch den Link unten rein. Sorry for that. In any case, this has been fully opened, so it does about 120 joule. I think that's close to 100 foot-pounds of energy, and that's about as powerful as a medieval crossbow could be in Viking Age, which was probably at the same time, maybe a little earlier. Of course, that is about as powerful as crossbows ever got. So, let's shoot at the wooden board first. Okay, and go. All right, one dead Viking. Well, definitely that is worst case for a Viking scenario, because this arrow penetrated deep enough to at least heavily injure the shield bearer. Boing. Alright, another benchmark. When we first tested the shield, I shot with the Verminator, which is a little bit weaker than the Bobcat, against the police shield, and it did penetrate, but not very far. So if we can now penetrate it, then actually it would mean that it's actually a worse material than this one, which is some darn fine thing. Okay, and fire. Whoa! Penetration. No, pseudo penetration. That's like the funniest arrow hit that I've ever seen. Unbelievable. What happened is that it looks like penetration, but if you look from the other side, come over, you can see that it did not penetrate, even though there's a tiny little notch here. What happened is that, you can see this from the other side some better I think, that it actually jammed in the tip into the material, so it sticks, and then it pushed it into the carbon shaft, and actually this now looks like a brush. Let's see if we can get this out. Definitely not easy to get out. Okay, it is easy. And here you can see the tip, and you can see the little hole, but that Viking would be alive. What we still have to test is what happens when we shoot one of these arrows into the boss. Of course, it's double layered with steel and plastics, but I want to know if this can penetrate the cold steel buckler. And I put on this mean tip, which is much like a Viking time tip. It's now used for 3D targets. That hopefully has a little better penetration. And whoa! That looks fun! So it penetrated quite deep, but I'm not sure at this point if that actually was stopped by the steel or it was the cold steel buckler that stopped it. And we have to look inside to see. All right. Oh, look. See that the paint is actually peeling off, and that can only be caused by the tip of the arrow hitting the steel boss. Let's pull out the arrow and see if it deformed. Now I know why it was so hard. See what happened to the tip? It curled in, and therefore I couldn't get it out so easily. Wow. So it's the steel boss that actually saved this Viking's life. Alright, we are going over to some melee tests, and I'm starting with this real mean hammer. So this of course is a hammer that would be devastating if you hit someone on the head with it or something, because I specifically sharpened it a little bit. So let's test it against the plywood first. Okay, and go! Whoa! It went through. Okay, blows like this is actually what a Viking shield would have effectively blocked. So this was a direct hit with mighty force, and it crashed through, but it was no danger for the Viking's life. Alright, so now with this one. And whoa! A dent. I dented it, hey! Alright, next we want to see what happens when someone really hits the shield with a sword. And I'm using my Viking training sword that I sharpened for that purpose. And because I am not a trained warrior with a sword, maybe with a slingshot, but not with the sword, we are using the old sword cannon. I dug it out and put on new rubber, and it's ready for action, and we're going to shoot at it against the shields harder than any Viking would have been able to. take careful aim. And wow, the Viking survived. So the shield saved the Viking, but not by a great margin, because look at how deep the blade pokes out of the other side. Now, would that really have injured the Viking? Well, you know, Viking shields were held like that, and the fist actually was protected by the boss. So actually there is a quite long distance to reach the arm, and also here on the upper side of the arm there's really no arteries. It's all protected by the bone. Therefore, I think it could have injured the Viking if the Viking would have been extremely unlucky. But on the other hand, I believe that this would have saved his life. Okay, now the modern shield. And I'm trying to hit it a little bit above the boss. And wow, what an energy! As you see, the shield is mostly intact. That is where the sword blade hit, and you can actually see that it really leveled the whole shield out of the setup here and threw it to the floor. But that Viking would probably have gotten a shock of his lifetime, but he would be completely uninjured. Maybe a little bit jarring feeling in his hands. Alright, of course now we're doing something that the Vikings wouldn't have been able to do, because we are using this steel-tipped steel arrow and we're firing it from a 300 bar homemade air rifle. This is the one that easily penetrated both the police shield and the police helmet visor and the wood behind it. And we'll of course first try to shoot it against the boss. I hope that I can hit it. And then in the second step we're going to try to see if it can penetrate the polycarbonate, which I think it can. Okay, I hope that I hit it, because this has not been shot in. And whoa! I can see a hole in the boss. So it went through the plastic boss, and mightily so. And then what actually happened is that it hit the steel boss and actually scraped, I'm not sure if you can see this well, but it scraped along the surface of the steel bolt, because it didn't hit it right in the middle. It was able to do that. And if you closely look at the tip, let's hope that the camera can zoom this in. So you can see that it scraped off a little bit of the steel from the outside of the steel boss, because this is a hardened center punch. Wow. But the Viking would have survived, without a doubt. Okay, I'm now trying to hit the polycarbonate shield, and I'm trying to hit it low in the hope that the shield won't jump out of the setup. And whoa! Yeah, unbelievable, it did not go through. Unfortunately, it came in so low that the high-speed camera didn't catch it. But what you can clearly see is here how deep it penetrated. Up to this point here, there's still like remnants of the polycarbonate, but the wound, quote unquote, closed again, so that now it can only be squeezed in like that far. But in reality, it did poke out a little bit. But of course, it was never a danger for the Viking. Now that, of course, is really impressive, because remember what happened when I shot this against the 4mm police shield? It went clean through. And here, it stopped it. This is what 10mm does. Well, okay, that shield, that delivered some phenomenal performance, I think. I was really not able to penetrate it deep enough to be of any danger to the Viking who uses it. So now would our time-traveling Viking weapon maker say thank you very much, take the whole thing back home and then conquer the world with an invincible shield? No, in fact he would not do that. He would probably say thanks very much, let me take that aluminum stuff that you have because that's interesting, and then leave me alone and I'll keep on using wood. And you want to know why? Well, with the help of this cold steel Viking sword, I'm going to demonstrate it to you. I know a lot of people say it's not authentic, but believe me, it has a super sharp blade. And that is what we need for our test. Because what I will now do is, I will strike it from above, like the Posta di Falcone thing, the easiest thing in sword fighting. See? Well, in fact, I'm now a bit surprised too, because I was testing this with a smaller piece and it shattered it all the way. But here, actually, what happened is something that is desirable, since, you know, it trapped the weapon and it's not easy to get it out. Actually, you can lift the entire shield. Well, it's a little bit sharp, but you can lift the entire shield from the socket here with it. And this means it's exactly what happened with a good Viking shield if it was hit along the fiber lines. And yes, a little bit of it splintered off, but that is an irrelevant piece and the shield is still mostly intact. So maybe our time-traveling Viking weapon maker would have taken it back home and would have conquered the world. And we would now all speak ancient Norse. Probably would have been fun, don't you think? Alright, time-traveling Viking weapon makers. Maybe you should have a look at this shield, because I think it is superior to anything that was around in the original Viking era. And actually, you can win the little brother of this thing, because I made another one specifically to raffle it away. Let me show you what I came up with. Meet the Time Traveler's double-bossed mini Viking shield buckler. Let me show you its features. It is made from the same 10mm polycarbonate material that I used for the big shield. But here I was using 2 steel bosses because the cold steel boss was actually the entire size, so that would not have looked very cool. And I used a plywood only handle to save some more weight, and I think this is really solid enough. And as you see, I also had to put a little bit of a distance ring here in between the 2 layers so that the bosses would nicely stack up. I think it's indestructible because this is 4mm steel. Nothing can penetrate that. And of course it makes a super weapon, and you can also attack people with it, I believe. You can win this, it's very simple. Just go and download the game, play it a little bit until you're in level 5 in the palace, and then take a snapshot and upload it as a comment to my Facebook page, link down below. You must use the post that I link, no other place. And also there is one little task that you also have to fulfill in order to qualify to win it. These are 2 Rambinis that are made from my Catalpa natural fork, and they are made from the same piece. They were actually stacked up like this, and it was thick enough so I could split it in the middle and use both. But as you see, one is a lot darker than the other. Why is that? Find out. Hint, hint. You have to scroll down on my Facebook page to see the reason. And put the answer next to your screenshot, level 5 in the palace. And then next week there will be the raffle for the mini Viking shield. Good luck. So, I hope you like this, because that's it for today. Thanks and bye-bye. As a little bonus, remember that cold steel says don't use it when training against steel swords? We tried that and I hammered against it, and see what happened when I hit this sideways. Not only did it completely destroy the buckler, but look what happened to the steel from the steel boss here. And the blade of the cold steel sword is unblemished. So, cold steel critics, do you still think this is a bad sword? Because I love it. And this is not sponsored by them.